those of us that have battled the darkness of tragedy, the darkness of trauma, the darkness of addiction, and then recovered our light through spiritual purification, become guiding lamps for others.
I've been to Turkey. I spent some time in Turkey. And, just to see these things they cause pain, right? They cause pain. And they should. They should cause pain. Because, like the hadith in Sahih Muslim, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he described the believers as a unified body. And he said, if the eye gets sore, right, then the whole body should feel it. And if there's a headache, the whole body should ache. All right? So we should feel the pain. If you don't feel pain, there's a problem. And you have to ask yourself, what's the problem? All right? As a therapist, as he said, I am a therapist. And when human beings go through pain, psychological pain, or even physical pain, we say, why? Why? And so what I want to focus on with this talk is, there's nothing wrong with saying why, right? Most of the time, this is an existential question. And when we ask existential questions, we're asking that question to Allah. We're saying, Allah, why? Why? What I want to stress is this. Notice your tone when you say why. There's nothing wrong with saying why. But pay attention to how you say why. When Shaitan asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a question, right? He said, أَأَشْجُدُ لِمَنْ خَلَقْتَ تِينًا? Should I make sajda to someone that you made from mud? This is a question to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's filled with disrespect, disapproval, disobedience. So you have to be careful how you ask questions. The angels also ask Allah a question. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I'm going to place a khalifa in the earth. My representative I'm going to place in the earth. And the angels already knew anything that lives on earth, there's going to be problems. Right? Because they have to have a nafs which allows them to live there. They have to have like a commander that's from that place, and it allows them to interact with that place. And so they went straight to the issue. Right? They ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَتَجْعَلُوا فِيهَا مَنْ يَفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاء? Are you going to place there someone who's going to cause corruption and shed blood? But how you know that they mean good by this question? They're also asking a question. But how do you know that they mean well? Because they tell you, the next verse is, وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّهُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُكَدِّسُ لَكَ. We praise you and we sanctify you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them an indication in his answer when he said, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know what you don't know. So he was telling him basically, from these people, I'm going to have ultimately my beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and people like Nabi Isa alayhi salam, and people like Nabi Musa alayhi salam, and all of the awliya and the salihin. Right? Yes, there's going to be people that corrupt the earth and shed blood, but also I know what will come from them. Okay? So what are some of these wisdoms? Why? Ya Rab, why do we have ibtila? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send down upon us trials and tribulations? You know, one of the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he used to make, and I would advise everyone to make this dua. Like, just make it a staple. Just make it a staple. That you always ask Allah this. Allahumma arini al-haqqa haqqan warzuqni ittiba'ah. Wa arini batila batilan warzuqni ijtinabah. Allahumma arini al-asha'a kama hiya. Oh Allah, show me truth as truth and allow me to follow it. Provide me a way to follow it. And show me falsehood as falsehood and provide me a way to stay away from it. Oh Allah, show me things as they really are. This is the spirit of the question of the angels. That's their spirit. They're saying, Ya Allah, show us, teach us, help us to know. Whereas Shaitan, he already had his mind made up. So when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a question, you have to ask yourself, are you coming like Malakani? You're coming like the angels, or are you coming like Shaitan? You have to ask yourself, how are you asking Allah this question? If you find it in yourself that you're asking the question out of rebellion, and the nafs rebel, like mashallah, we're coming into Ramadan. Ramadan is a naf buster. It's to help you to break yourself down, to get away from the nafs saying that they are your master. You have to break them. So if you find it in yourself, when you go through tribulations, and you will go through tribulations, this is dar al-ibtila. This is the place of trials and tribulations. And this is what Allah promised us. You're going to go through it. So if you find in your nafs that your nafs are saying, why? With the spirit of rebellion, with the spirit of disapproval, with the spirit of disrespect, you have to say, لا يسأل أما يفعل وهم يسألون. He, Allah, is not asked about what He does, but you will be asked about what you do. You have to say that to yourself until the nafs accepts it, so that you don't end up like Shaitan, who is now ar-rajim, the accursed. He's kicked out. Anyone ever heard of Sultan al-Ulama, Ibn al-Izz Abdus Salam, the scholar? He lived about 700 years ago in Egypt. Any Egyptians here? Okay. North Africa, mashallah. So he was a scholar from your land. And he wrote a book just on the benefits of trials and tribulations. Trials and tribulation. The benefits. Why it's good to have trials and tribulations. Right? Like, we're from the West. Probably most of us were born here. You know what I mean? We think like we're not supposed to have any problems. Everything is supposed to go smooth. But that's not what Allah says. That's not what Allah says. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوءِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. And then He tells you how to respond. وَبَشَّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. For sure, we're going to test you. مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ. You're going to get tested with fear and everything like fear. All that that range of emotions, you're going to get tested with it. Right? So, fear, anxiety, the cousin of anxiety is depression, anger. You're going to get it all. من الخوف والجوع, hunger. What do you think they're experiencing right now in Turkey? ونقص من الأموال. We all know this. You're going to lose some money. You're going to lose some money. وأنفس. There's lives are going to be lost. You're gonna lose loved ones, or they might lose you. That's what you're promised. That's what you're promised. وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, right? Fruits. This is for the farmer, agriculture. You're going to lose things. Your yield might not be what you need it to be every year. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you how to respond. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Give glad tidings to the one who is patient. To those who are patient. Pain and suffering is a great catalyst. It's a great, great catalyst for change. For change. It's redemptive. And it causes you to question, what is this all about? Where did I go wrong? What am I missing? If you're smart, those are the questions you'll ask yourself. If you're smart. But if the nafs needs some, checking, tell him the other thing. Right? لا يسألوا عما يفعلوا وهم يسألون. Say that. Allah is not asked about what he does. Right? You're going to be asked about what you do. And you should know that in the Hadith Qudsi, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ana indi mukassarati qulubuhum. I am with those who their hearts are broken. Why are their hearts broken? This is not a soap opera. He's not talking about because, your boyfriend moved away. That's not the heart being broken that's being talked about here. Or your girlfriend moves away. That's not the thing. Allah sends down trials and tribulations in order to test you, to see how you will respond. And when you're in that state and your heart is broken, Allah is with you. Allah is with you. This is the promise. Allah is with you. So respond accordingly. Respond accordingly. It may be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to test you to see if you are one of the ones that He mentions in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned those who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the edge. We worship Allah on the edge. If everything is going good, I'm going to go to the masjid. We're going to listen to Ustedh Tabari talk today. If everything is going good. But how do you respond when things are going bad? And believe me, things can go bad. Things can go really, really bad. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى الْحَرْفِ. There's from among mankind, they worship Allah on the edge. They worship Allah, when things are going good. But when things go bad, they begin to have dhanna jahiliyyah. They have thoughts as if they are non-Muslim. And that's when you have to check yourself before you wreck yourself. And in another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ قَوْمًا ابْتِلَاهُمْ. When Allah loves a people, and in context, by extension, when Allah loves a person, He examines him. In the old days, when someone used to give you a piece of gold, right? They had a way of testing it. How do you test gold? Anybody? How do you test gold? Oh, you light it. Yes. Yes, this is one way. What's that? You put it under fire. You put it under fire. That's what you have in here, people. You have pure gold. And if you want to separate the filth from your gold, it has to be trial by fire. You've got to test it. How do you know that you're not one of the ones who worship Allah on the edge if you're not tested? How do you know? How do you know you can withstand mighty tests if you're not put through it? How do you know that you are on your way to becoming one of those beloved of Allah if there you don't have any tests? You have to have tests. You have to be tested. So, and this is what Sayyid Nursi, right? One of the great Islamic scholars from Turkey. This is what he said. He said that Allah will give you physical tribulations so that the person will want to get out of this world and meet Allah. You know, I have family members who have, physical diseases that they deal with every day. And alhamdulillah, they never questioned Allah. But dealing with that pain every day, they want to get out of here, man. Ya Allah, take me back. Ya Allah, take me back. And they're just getting ajr every day, every day. They're just stacking it up when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing them with this disease. And then, because it's also a test for those who have to take care of them. The scholar, I believe it was his kunya, meaning his title is Sultan al-Ulama. Right? He's amongst the ulama, he's the authority. He's the one. And he said that human beings are in two states. Either they have a state of afiyah, well-being, general overall well-being, or they're being examined. And don't think that your examination has to be hardship. Your examination can be everything is all good. That's your test. You have a lot of money, you have a lot of property, everything's going well. What about your neighbor? What about the masjid? Is everybody who deserves your zakat getting their zakat? That may be your test. So maybe you are in a state of afiyah, right? Your responsibility at that point is to help those who are in a state of being tested. Mubtala. They are under a trial and tribulation. If you have afiyah, it's your responsibility to help those who are being tried and tested. And if you're one of those who are being tried and tested, you have to be patient. You have to be patient. Everybody has a role to play. And this is why Maulana Rumi from Turkey, right? He said, it is from the wound that the light enters. So in other words, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really wants to illuminate your heart, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really wants to take you to give you a higher station, a higher maqam, here comes the trials and tribulations. But that's how you rise to the next level. Respond appropriately. No matter if you're in afiyah or if you're mubtala, if you have ibtila, doesn't matter. Respond appropriately. As far as the brothers and sisters in Turkey, it may be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just wanted to honor them to be shuhada. This is an honor. Right? This is an honor. What did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about this? You can find this hadith in Ahmed, the Musnad of Imam Ahmed, Abu Dawood, and Nisa'i, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there are 7 kinds of martyrs besides those that are killed in wars. They're killed in wars defending the cause of Allah. These martyrs are, number 1, a person who's killed because of an epidemic. Shaheed. He's shaheed. Number 2, the person who drowns. Shaheed. Number 3, the person who has bed sores causing him fever and cough, resulting in his death. Shaheed. A person who dies of a stomach disease. Shaheed. The person who dies in a fire. Shaheed. And the person who dies because of falling debris. Shaheed. All of those people who died because of that earthquake, under the rubble, shuhada. Shuhada. Right? So what is the gifts of the shuhada? What do they get? Right? Their lives are cut short. They don't have a chance to fulfill their potential. Because we all have potential. We have this potential. Every single person has the potential to become wali, to become of the awliya, a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We all have that potential. So what happens when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls someone back and so they didn't have a chance to fulfill their potential? Another hadith recorded by Imam at-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, the Musnad of Imam Ahmed, the Musannad of Abdul Razak and Imam Tabarani, said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the martyr has 7 blessings from Allah. He has 7 blessings. Number 1, he is forgiven the moment that his blood is shed. Number 2, he's shown his place in paradise. Number 3, he's spared the trials of the grave. There's no punishment in the grave. There's no test in the grave. He passes go. Right? He will be secure on the day of the greatest terror, Yawm al-Qiyamah. He's secure. While we're all standing saying, man, when is this going to be over with? Which book am I going to get which hand am I going to get my book in? They're just chilling, man. They're watching. Like, yeah, glad I didn't have to go through that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also said, they will be placed on their heads a crown of dignity, in which are rubies, one of which is better than this world and everything in it. And he also said that the martyr is permitted to intercede for 70 of its relatives. 70. Right? Maybe some of us won't make it. Maybe some of us won't make it, but the relative that passed away will say, no, I got you. Come, yeah, let him through. Yeah, come on, I got you. Right? He's honored. She's honored. And you're over here saying, why? That's why. Okay? Another thing to consider. You don't know what's good for you. How many mistakes have we made in our lives? How many bad choices have we made in our lives? How many wrong turns have we made in our lives? If you don't know what's good for you, how do you know what's good for somebody else? How? So this is reframing. This is what we call it as therapists, right? You know, when somebody, they can only see one way, you have to give them multiple perspectives. Say, have you considered this perspective? Maybe this, it can go like this, or this is the reason why this happened. This is why this has to go this way. And this is the question that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to think about in the Quran. When He says, Asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum. Perhaps you hate a thing, but it's good for you. You hate it, but you need it. And then He goes on to say, wa asa an tuhibbu shay'an wa huwa sharrun lakum. You may love a thing, but it's bad for you. And then He says, right? Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. Allah, He knows. You don't know jack. You don't know. Right? So these are all some of the right things to think about. When you see things you don't understand and you know it came from Allah. Everything is because of Allah. Allah, He allows it. Even if you perceive it as something evil, Allah is the one who allowed it. So before you say why, in the spirit of disrespect, the mood of disrespect, disapproval, why did you do that to me? Who are you? Who are you? You tell yourself, He knows. I don't know. Allah, He knows. Wallahi, listen. For me, this is not theoretical. This is not theoretical for me. Right? I've had serious crises in my life where I had to force myself to go and make 2 rakats and say, Ya Allah, help me to accept this because I don't understand. And it took a decade for me to understand. But then I was like, thank you, Rabbi. Yes. So for me, this is not theoretical. I'm telling you, sometimes you have to force yourself to go and submit to what Allah has put on your plate. Otherwise, you're going to be disrespectful. You're going to be disrespectful. You're going to be and Allah has not hidden from you even your thoughts. Allah is not hidden from your thoughts. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, He told us, Yawm al-Qiyamah, between you'll be behind a veil. It's just you and Allah. Now, Allah doesn't take us to account for what we think. He doesn't take us to account, but you will be asked. You remember? Before you went into the masjid in Yorba Linda in 2023, and you had this thought about me, you will be asked. So pay attention to how you think. You won't be punished, but you will be asked. So have good thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, I know I'm running out of time. So now the question is, okay, how do you respond to ibtila? How do you respond to trials and tribulations? Because they're coming. They're coming. When you get enough of these, you're going to know. All right? If you get enough of this white, you're going to understand. They're coming. All right? And in the email that they sent me, Kashan, where is he? Kashin, okay. So in the email that he sent me, he said that this platform is used to talk about like purification, all right? Purification of the heart? Okay. So I'm just going to give you some tidbits. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, right? He says, تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. Right? You know, تبارك الذي بيده الملك. Blessed be the one who in his hand is mulk. all of creation, dominion. وهو على كل شيء قدير. He has power over everything. الذي خلق الموت والحياة. He is the one who has created death. In most of the ayats in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He created, He starts with life. But in this verse, He says, I created death. And then life. And then He tells you why. To give you trials and tribulations. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم. To give you trials and tribulations. How do you respond? How should you respond? He gives you an indication at the end of the verse. أيكم أحسن أملا. Which of you will have ihsan in his actions? You see, you don't know who the muhsin is. You don't know the one who has qalb salim, the pure heart, until he's been put in that fire of purification. You don't know. We all have grandiose ideas about ourselves. We all think we're somebody. Yes, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that. Okay, let's see. When those trials and tribulations come, we'll know who you are. We'll recognize you. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here. That He created death and life to give you trials and tribulations. To see who, ayyukum, which of you, which one? You, who will have ihsan in his actions despite the trial, despite the tribulation. We don't know if you are muhsin. We don't know if you have ihsan until you've been tested. That's how we're going to know. How do you respond? So you notice that in both of these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the end, He mentions either ihsan directly or a virtue that comes because of ihsan. So He says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Sabr is one of the first things that you need to traverse the path of purification. You want to be muhsin? You want to have a sound heart? You want to have a heart that's free of spiritual diseases? This starts with sabr. You cannot do mujahada. There's no struggling against the self unless you have some type of sabr. You have to have some type of patience. You have to have some type of patience. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this verse, He mentions one of the virtues of ihsan that you have to have. But in Surah Al-Mulk, He tells you straight up, like, we want to know who's going to have ihsan when we come with the bala, when we come with that ibtila, we come with the trials and tribulations, then we're going to know who you are. Even though He already knows, the bala just exposes us. You just get exposed. Okay, you couldn't get your Dunkin' Donuts this morning, and so now you want to act like a fool. We know exactly where you are. Right? And I don't like to be theoretical. All right? I always try to give examples. I like to give examples when I'm speaking of concepts. So I have 20 minutes left. I want to give you an example. What does ihsan look like? Give a concrete example. Starting from the seerah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how does ihsan look? How does it look? Does anybody know the story of Rumaysa Salim? Rumaysa Salim. She's one of the Sahabiyat, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She's one of the Ansar, she's one of the women from the Ansar. And she has a beautiful story. I'm just going to tell you one part of her story, but she has a beautiful story. So she was married to Abu Talha, another Ansar. And they had a baby boy. And the boy was sick. And so Abu Talha, he wanted to go on a journey. But you know, in those days, you know, we didn't have instant communication or smartphones, you know. So you might leave and the ones who are sick, you might never see them again. But Rumaysa Salim, she told him, no, go. Do what you have to do. So Abu Talha left. And while he was gone, his son died. Rumaysa Salim, she goes and tells her family, the baby has died. But I don't want anyone to tell Abu Talha. I want to be the one to tell him. Okay? That was the instant communication in those days. Right? You tell him, he tells him, he tells him, he tells him, he tells him. She's like, don't do that. I want to be the one. So Abu Talha comes back from he's gone for weeks. He comes back. And when he enters the house, he asks Rumaysa, how is our son? She says, better. And she put on makeup for Abu Talha. She cooked him a meal. And they were even intimate. Later on in the night, she begins to have a conversation with him. She says, what about our neighbor? He said, what about the neighbor? She said, I loaned the neighbor some, household utensil. And when I came to get my thing back, the neighbor refused. And so Abu Talha said, no, that's no good. No, they're wrong. So Rumaysa Salim said, that's our case. Allah gave us a loan. And Allah has taken the loan back. But now Abu Talha is like, wait. You fed me, makeup and everything, and now you tell me this? He didn't accept. So from that moment until Fajr, she kept saying to him, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to Allah. And we're going back. We're going to return to Him. And he was so disturbed about this that he went to Rasulullah at Fajr. Like, yo, Rasulullah, I gotta tell you about this. Look, man. Right? And Rasulullah smiled when he heard it and said, no, she did well. She did well. May Allah bless your union. Right? Meaning the intimacy. May Allah bless it that night. And she conceived that night. And they had a son who became known as one of the best qari', the reciters and people who understand the Quran. In our times, there are people who recite but they don't understand. But in those times, they would learn one verse, understand all of its implications, and then go to the next verse. So they had a son who was like that. He would memorize the verse, but he understood all of the implications of the verse. He had fiqh, deep understanding of the verse. And from him came 10 more descendants of Abu Talha and Rumaysa Salim, all of them experts in the Quran. Because she responded correctly. Because she responded correctly. How are you thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How are you thinking when things go wrong, bad things happen? How are you seeing Rabbil Alameen? How are you responding? Because that's going to determine if you are ayyukum ahsanu amala. Which of you is going to respond with ihsan? And I'll end with this. Sometimes we bring the trial and tribulation on ourselves. We do things that makes the whole structure crumble on our heads. Even then, you are not supposed to say, see, I told you, you did that to yourself. You're not supposed to do that. Right? Think about Uhud. Think about Uhud. Right? This is no small matter. 70 lives were lost because the archers did not obey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They didn't stay at the place where he told them to stay. And so there were 70 martyrs lost. 3 more died later because of their wounds. And let's not even talk about the orphans and the widows that because of that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even tells us that when that happened, some of them, they had dhana jahiliyyah. We're talking about the Sahaba radiallahu an. But Allah mentions it in His book. That some of them were like, how we were promised something other than this. Why did this happen and this and this and, right? And how did Allah tell Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to respond? How did He tell him to respond to not just the ones who disobeyed Him, right? But the ones who were left in Medina with broken hearts. He said, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لَنْتَ لَهُمْ. نعم. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. It is because of the mercy of Allah that you are gentle with them. This is a case study on how to deal with people even when they bring tribulation on themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him, be gentle with them. Deal with them. This verse is directly connected to Uhud. Directly connected to what happened. And even though they disobeyed and there was a huge tragedy, Rasulullah, he did not, you didn't listen. You're hard-headed. I told you. He was gentle with them. Lenta lahum. And then Allah tells us what would have happened if he was fadwan, ghalid al-qalbi, harsh, hard-hearted. They would have just left you. They would have fled from around you. So even when people do things that brings trials and tribulations on themselves, you have to say, yeah, man, all right, man, come on, let's pick up the pieces. All right, let's go. Right? So I will stop right there. I think we have 10 minutes for questions. Bismillah. Bismillah.
So, first off,
Ra'yak.
the question I have is surrounding, again, like the mental health field, and when it comes to practicing Islam. At times, I feel like myself, along with others within our age group, tend to feel a lot of guilt when it comes to
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big question. I would tell them, just, yesterday, you just say, Astaghfirullah. Rabbi Ghfirli. Rabbi Tub alayya. Right? What's done is done. That's yesterday. In the books of fiqh, the ulama, they talk about this, right? They talk about the person who, right, Ramadan comes, but he hasn't been praying, but he fasts. And then someone will come and say, you didn't even pray the whole year, now you're fasting? That's shaitan, straight up. That is shaitan. This is waswasa. Run away from him or her. Right? And the ulama, because this is a human problem, right? This is a human problem. The only thing we can see is what's bad. No. Even if you're not praying, fast. And if you're not fasting, pray. And pick up wherever you are. Wallahi, I tell this to people in my practice. I'm just a narrator, right? Like I'm just bringing the tradition to you, right? It's not, I don't give fatwa, right? I want to know what the ulama said, and then I narrate what the ulama said, okay? This is what the ulama say. The ulama, if a person comes to you and he's not praying, say, look, man, just pray one prayer. Take the easiest one for you. Start with just one. Right? If dhuhr is easy for you, just pray dhuhr. Don't pray sunnahs, don't pray nafilah, just pray dhuhr. And when you get that, then add the next one that's easiest for you. So if all you're doing is dhuhr and maghrib, okay, that's good. And there's many, many examples of this. There's many, many examples. The man came to Imam Abu Hanifa and asked about praying without, he didn't want to make wudu. He just wanted to pray without wudu. Imam Abu Hanifa, now this is one of the major imams of this deen. This is how we learn Sharia. One of the major imams of the Sharia. But he understands human nature. So somebody's coming to him and say, yeah, Imam, I want to pray, man, but I don't want to make wudu. So the Imam told him, okay, yeah, pray without wudu. So when he left, Imam Abu Hanifa is surrounded by his companions. They're all ulama. They're all hadith scholars, grammarians, scholars of Quran. So they're like, how do you do that? How do you give him permission for that? He said, no. Once he realizes that he's not getting credit for it, but he's going through the motions, he'll start making wudu. You'll see. And that's what the narration says. Eventually, he started praying. Right? And so we have to be lintalahum. Right? Don't be, gharid and qalbi, hard-hearted and so, no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His rahmah is wasi'ah. His mercy is wasi'ah, like, And so you just give people nuggets. Some people are they're babies spiritually. Okay, deal with them as a baby. That's what I would say. I hope that answers your question. Shukran. Anyone else? Oh, y'all too cool to ask questions. All right. Yes.
So with current events that, I feel like in the news constantly it's always bad news.
Yeah.
And so with current events taking place that always have negative nature, I think there's a more perception to becoming desensitized.
Yeah.
So it's do you have any advice from an Islamic perspective, how do you deal with desensitization?
Man, you don't want to hear what I gotta say. Man, turn it off, man. Just turn the tube off. Just turn it off, right? You don't want to ruin your heart, and that's right? That's what happens when you hear trauma and I'm speaking clinically now, right? When you're always exposed to bad things. And that's all we get as therapists. That's all we get. We get all the bad stuff. Nobody comes and says, yes, Ustedh, I'm doing good. Everything's going good. We get all the bad stuff. And you have to have a spirit of hope, right? You have to be able to, see hope in every situation. You have to. And the way that you do that is to be curious. Stay curious. In therapy, I want to know this person. I want to understand them. I want to know what makes them tick. And so I'm curious. Yeah, okay, tell me more. What's going on here? Tell me more. Tell me more. When you see bad stuff on the news, you say, what is Allah doing? There's something good there. There's something good. What is Allah? What is He doing? Stay curious. It will allow you to be hopeful in every situation. Say what you have to say. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allah asturna bi sitrikal jamil. Allah cover us with a beauty. Say what you have to say. But then say, Allah is doing something. Arini al-haqqa. Ya Allah, show me your wisdom here. Right? And He will. I hope you understand. Yes.
When it comes to obviously in our world there's trials and tribulations around the world,
Yeah.
whether they're, ongoing and been going on for decades and a lot of centuries, or like in Syria and Turkey, this earthquake that happened, a couple of weeks ago, versus, there are Muslims and even non-Muslims in our own area who are struggling, and have their own trials and tribulations, who it may not be like objectively as bad as it is over. How do we balance as Muslims? Like, should we prefer one over the other? Should we focus locally first? Or
this is an excellent question. Shar'an, right? According to the Sharia, you always start locally, right? When you want to know who do you give your zakat to, when you want to know who do you, provide your services to, you always start to the one closest to you. All right? Now, of course, if you see, somebody who needs it more, right? Okay, I'll give you another example. Now, this is after Uhud. Okay, this is after Uhud. So just think about this. They during the battle of Uhud, they mutilated Hamza radiallahu an, the uncle of Rasulullah. They mutilated, cut off his nose, cut off his ears, his genitals. They did despicable things, and the Muslims had to see that in order to bury him. Right? Just imagine. Now, they did that to him. They did it to some of the other Sahaba also. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had a famine later on that year in Mecca, right? Remember, Mecca everything's imported. All right, it wasn't like Medina where everything was agricultural. You grow stuff. It wasn't like that. Everything was imported. So if stuff is not coming in, people go hungry. Despite what they did, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent them a caravan of food. He sent them a caravan of food because those circumstances were worse than what was happening locally, right? So you have to weigh that, right? You have to say, okay, I gave my charity to the masjid so that we can keep producing good Muslim kids and that. Now these people really, really need it. Okay, let me send it, right? So you have to weigh, there's not going to be a black and white answer. You have to weigh it based upon the circumstances, But that's, Rasulullah did that. He sent them a caravan of food, after what they did. After what they did. Just think about that.
Yes. I have a question, but this question is kind of like, as a psychologist, I want to answer it.
This
So,
one.
okay, so there's a hadith that says, يَرْفَعُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ يَأْتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ.
Say it again.
يرفع الله الذين آمنوا والذين أوتوا العلم درجات.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so now I want to bring physics to it. Okay,
Yes.
so if you are keep learning and learning and learning, and your heart is soft and everything, and you go up on the ladder,
Yes.
you go all the way up. But when you're lower in the ladder and you fell, it's not a huge impact on yourself. But when you're all the way up on that ladder, and at one time, I don't know, you got astray, or your diet hasn't gotten accepted yet, or something like that, and your heart was like, got broken a little bit, and you fell from that ladder. And when you fell from that ladder, because it's such a huge fall, it's kind of hurt you so much. How would you heal yourself from that? Or how would you go up again and try to climb that ladder?
Man. Number one, that's a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's a favor, actually. So you mentioned a couple of things, and I don't. This is a long answer, right? So I'm gonna try to make it short because we're actually over time already. So let me make sure I understand the question. You're saying basically that there's somebody that is on that path of not only seeking knowledge, and obviously they're trying to put it into practice, and so they've scaled these heights of spirituality, right? They've grown. But then something happens and then they feel like they fell all the way back, right? Like, how do you recover from that? Am I understanding it correctly? Okay. Number one, you don't lose anything, right? If you learn the knowledge and you put it into practice, that's with Allah. And you'll find it with Allah, right? Shaitan is simply trying to make you despair. Yes. He wants you to be filled with, you can't come back from this. And he's a liar. He's a liar. You can come back from anything, right? But step by step, right? The first thing, as a therapist, what we try to do, instill hope, right? No. What is it that you want? Don't forget what you wanted. It doesn't matter what happens. You can still go after what you want. Right? And of course, what Allah allows and how it unfolds and things like that. But don't lose hope in what you wanted. You wanted darajat. You wanted this maqam. Sometimes it's by falling that you get it.